Thank you for this interview. So, UK policy for hooliganism is considered worldwide as the most effective practice. Why?
So I think the one thing we do well is a collaboration between the police, the clubs, and all the agencies to work in a joined-up way. I think if any part of that system doesn't work, then you will really struggle to deal with the issue. We also have some really effective legislation, so there is specific football-related legislation.
How do you behave to a hooligan? What is the punishment, from the most trivial to the most severe?
So that if people are very drunk and causing problems or using drugs at football, they can be banned from attending football matches. We won't necessarily seek to criminalise them and put them in prison. We might work on a diversion scheme to educate them, to prevent their behaviour from escalating. But where people are engaged in more serious offences, they will obviously be prosecuted under the relevant offence. But the benefit is, of course, as well, that we can then seek a banning order which prevents them from going to football for between 3 and 10 years. Is that from the 1990s, really, where we've started to use it really effectively? As I say, we gather intelligence. Each football club has a dedicated police officer who will work with them.
Nowadays, once again in Greece, the government discusses police measures and actions in confronting hooliganism. Only in 2023, 2 civilians lost their life, and the latest victim is a policeman who is hospitalized in critical condition. How could we use UK policy as an example?
I have some awareness of the issues in Greece, so I can only really speak from my experience and what I've seen work well in other countries. I think, first of all, you need dedicated resource, a national unit that can coordinate with all the forces around your country. I think you need to gather intelligence so that you understand who are the real troublemakers. And then if you have a really serious problem where people are losing their lives and being injured, then it may be that you would want to consider specific football-related legislation to give the police the tools to be able to combat it effectively.
After all these violent incidents, Greek authorities at last decided to apply the measure of entrance in the stadia strictly with the validation of every fan's ID. CCTV also is said to be established in every football stadium, although the last victim was attacked in a volley match. And Hellenic police demands to withdraw from the security measures. A comment, please.
I think the use of ID cards, if you've got a serious problem, the most important thing is to ensure that you can identify the troublemakers. As I say, and if it were that you went down the route of identification cards, then at least you'll be certain of who is misbehaving when it's tied to CCTV. So some fans wouldn't like the use of identification cards, we understand that. But the benefit is if you can target your activity on those who cause trouble, then it should make it better for the vast majority of other fans.
What role did the use of technology play in preventing acts of violence by hooligans at the stadia? Could you provide us with some examples and comment on their effectiveness in the fight against sports-related violence?
CCTV is a really powerful tool. It would be difficult for us to imagine running a major event without CCTV now, certainly within the stadiums. But I think we also benefit in this country from CCTV being very widespread in public spaces. So what you'll often see, of course, is when the stadiums are well controlled, people who want to engage in hooliganism can cause problems away from the stadium. So CCTV is a really important tool for us, and increasingly social media. So when we conduct investigations, we will look at YouTube or other social media and gather evidence, because often the hooligans themselves will post videos on YouTube. So we will gather that evidence, and that becomes a really important part of the prosecution. And one of the benefits of our legislation is that if people misbehave abroad, so if England fans come to Greece and misbehave, we can gather the evidence and seek a banning order back in the UK. So if we have footage from the Greek police, if we have footage from social media, or if our officers were working with their Greek colleagues and get footage, but we can gather the evidence and seek a banning order again to prevent them attending football in the UK and to surrender their passport when their team plays abroad.
There is strong evidence that in Greece the armies of hooligans often are controlled and guided, secretly of course, by the official ownership of the club. What role did the clubs play in containing hooliganism both inside and outside stadia?
From my perspective, need to take responsibility. You know, the police, I'm sure in Greece, as in the UK, the police have got a lot of challenges to deal with. And we take the view that it's not for the police to subsidise football clubs. So the clubs have to pay for the police who work at the stadium. So they generally want to step forward and do the security. So the club are responsible for searching. The club are responsible for stewards, security. The police are there to support if people commit crimes or act in a violent manner. If you have club owners who are inciting hooligans, then they're acting in a criminal manner and should be dealt with by the police and prosecuted, because it's utterly inexcusable for people who run the clubs to be doing things that encourage violence. And whether they're a chairman or whoever they are, if they're acting in a criminal manner, then they need to be dealt with as a criminal. That is one of the strengths, that our clubs work really hard to prevent hooliganism. We don't really have examples where clubs are supportive of hooligan groups, and that makes it a much more powerful position, because we know even the clubs, the hooligans are really loyal to their clubs. The clubs are really important to them. So if the club is sending the message that we condone your actions, then that's going to empower the hooligans to act in a bad way. If they're not working with the police, then you're never going to solve the problem.